What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
The Tim Ferriss Show podcast. I've been a fan of Tim Ferriss since, the first time he came on my radar was through Dignation and Kevin Rose. Him and Kevin had done a few podcasts together called The Random Show. But kind of a guy that started out, it seemed, to do a lot of biohacking when that was kind of a trendy thing to try and, like, bulletproof coffee kind of came out of that movement, and just ways in which people trying to understand health in a different way than traditionally thought of. But Tim would do all these different things. He wrote the book called The 4-Hour Work Week, The 4-Hour Body, The 4-Hour Chef. But the 4-Hour Work Week is about kind of restructuring your life so that you are making the money you need to make to afford the lifestyle that you want to have, instead of just working blindly at a job that you hate for a certain amount of time until you're supposed to be retiring, like the age of retirement, to pull out your 401k, and then you start a retirement. Instead of living that life, like maybe enjoying life in the moment while working, but doing work in something that you love, and the many ways in which you can free up more time, like automating things, outsourcing things, just doing work in a different way to be more efficient, to make more money. But just a great book that inspired me when I read that probably 2012, something like that. I don't know if I listened to the audio book or if I actually read it. I know I had the book and I gifted it to somebody, but that was like early Inspired Disorder Collective. Inspired Disorder podcast has kind of evolved a couple times, but I was reading Tim Ferriss and also Gary Vaynerchuk's books, so they were like super influential to me in those times. So is Kevin Rose and the things Kevin's done over the years, like kind of people I've looked up to in a lot of ways. Tim Ferriss was just recently on Ari Shaffir's Skeptic Tank. They had a great 2-hour, 3-hour interview, conversation. But the Tim Ferriss Show is great. It's very similar in a lot of ways to like Joe Rogan podcast, where he has on different people who are exceptional at what they do and they have a conversation. Tim Ferriss is a little bit more, Joe Rogan dips into MMA and just kind of has fun conversations with fun people, in addition to having like doctors and authors and scientists and politicians and business owners and all kinds of different important, successful people. But Tim Ferriss is more focused on that. And just great episodes. The show itself has kind of evolved. It used to be very structured. He would ask all the similar questions to each guest. And later, a lot of those early episodes turned into another book of his called The Tools of Titans, which I've read some of, but it's basically the structure of the book is almost like a reference manual with different segments of conversations that were had on the Tim Ferriss Show, the transcripts of those in book form. So it's kind of a different way to consume the conversations that he had, kind of grouping related topics to each other. But because I had already listened to a lot of those podcasts, it was kind of hard book for me to sink into. But if you're a fan of his podcast, then you understand. You almost don't need. It's like reading the book before they make the movie. It's like they got to cut so much of that book out to make that movie that you're not going to getting like a watered down version of it. And that's kind of what I'd listened to all the long form versions of the podcast. So reading the book, but I still have it. So it's one of those things that's like there if I need it. But huge inspiration, Tim Ferriss, to me. Huge inspiration, along with Gary Vaynerchuk and Joe Rogan and Kevin Rose, as far as like these people that have done things and become successful doing these things. And they're like good people. And they're like interested in becoming smarter, interested in understanding what it takes to be exceptional at what you do, taking pride in what you do, trying to improve, constantly reviewing yourself and trying to improve on the things that you can improve on and grow in the ways like challenging yourself, putting yourself out there. Understanding failure is guaranteed to happen multiple times. That's what learning is. Like if everybody just was correct and successful their first attempt, then no challenge. That's where challenges come from. Growth comes from overcoming challenges. But Tim Ferriss, huge inspiration, and just one of those. His podcast is one of those things where, it's like because it's education. It's like TED Talks. It's like I know I'm going to learn something. I know there's going to be stuff potentially that's going to go over my head, but I'm going to end up soaking up so much from listening to this. It makes my brain. I remember when I was driving to Denver. It was long drive, a lot of podcast time, and I downloaded a lot of podcasts because I wasn't sure if I was going to have reception all the way through everywhere I was driving to get from California to Denver. So the Tim Ferriss Show was one of those podcasts, along with Joe Rogan podcast, along with This American Life or Radio Lab, or all these like brain enhancing podcasts, like to not just, I had entertaining podcasts in there too, like Kill Tony or Ari Shaffir's Skeptic Tank or Your Mom's House or Getting Douglas Movies. But I had the brain food ones too. And I remember it was Tim Ferriss, and I want to say it was Jocko Willink. It was one of those military guys that was on there, and it was just, I was driving through the canyons from, I don't know if I was still in Utah, going from Utah to Colorado, but I mean, the mountain ranges are gorgeous, but it was like you're just driving towards this mountain, and somehow there's this crease inside this mountain, this vein that you end up going through, but it looks like just a sheer cliff you're driving towards. Anyway, the drive to Denver was gorgeous, and the drive back was gorgeous as well. But Tim Ferriss Show is one of those podcasts that I've been listening to for a long time. Very simple podcast. There's a few video versions of the show on his YouTube channel, but they're primarily audio, which he does have the audio versions, I think, on his YouTube channel. But just one-on-one conversations, more interview. Tim Ferriss is very controlled, and he has opened up and kind of expanded, allowed himself to, it seems, go with the flow of conversations and dig deeper where it needs to be, and tangents where they need to be. His most recent one, or fairly recent one, with Neil Gaiman is amazing. He's a huge fan of Neil Gaiman and his work, and so you could tell in his voice it was extra special for him to interview somebody that he looks up to. And it was a great podcast. Also, he's done podcasts with Arnold Schwarzenegger that was really good. He's done amazing. They're so good. If you're not, it's like, just sink in and you'll be smarter and you'll thank me. And maybe you won't. I don't know. But go check out the Tim Ferriss Show. I highly recommend it. It's, one of those podcasts that's, they're all inspirations in a lot of different ways, but this one's like, it just feels good I feel smarter. I feel better after listening to it. But go check out Tim Ferriss Show. All podcasts everywhere. His website's amazing. Tons of resources there. Tim Ferriss blog, I think it's called. But new episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out daily. Subscribe on IGTV and everywhere else podcasts are found. Binge the full week in advance over at patreon.com/inspireddisorder. InspiredDisorder.com for all of my original artwork. Go buy some paintings now. At Ray Taylor for me on all social media. Give me a follow over there. Have a great day, everybody. Peace out!